Breaking, the paddock keeps saying 2026 is a reset, but for Oscar Piastri, it doesn't feel like a reset at all. It feels like a trapdoor. Because here's the uncomfortable truth nobody wants to say too loudly. When your teammate becomes world champion, equal treatment stops being a principle and starts becoming a test. A real one. The kind that shows up in tiny decisions: who gets the first new part, whose strategy gets protected in a chaotic race, whose radio gets the calmer voice, whose weekend gets built around maximum points versus maximum learning. And Oscar isn't some background character in this story. He's the guy who looked like the future, the guy who led the championship for long stretches, the guy who proved more than once that he can win, qualify on the front row, and go wheel to wheel without blinking. So when 2025 ended with Lando Norris lifting the trophy and Oscar standing nearby like a supporting act, the question wasn't, is Oscar good enough? The question became far more dangerous. Is McLaren still Oscar's team too, or is it becoming Lando's team? Let's talk about why this is suddenly the hottest tension line going into 2026, and why it could explode faster than people think. First, we need to understand something about Formula One that fans often feel but teams rarely admit. Neutrality is easiest when nobody is a champion. When you have two hungry drivers chasing a title, you can sell it as a fair fight. But the second one of them wins the world championship, the entire ecosystem shifts. Not because the team gathers in a meeting and announces, "Right, from tomorrow we're backing the champion." That's not how it works. It's subtler, it's gravity. The champion becomes the face on the sponsor deck. The champion becomes the headline. The champion becomes the reference point in the factory when people talk about defending and repeating. And once the word defend enters the building, a team, almost automatically, starts protecting the champion's campaign, because defending a title is more valuable than proving a philosophical point about fairness. And this is why Oscar Piastri's situation is so tense right now, because Oscar doesn't just need a fast car in 2026, he needs something else. He needs trust. And trust in F1 is not a motivational quote. Trust is operational. It's strategic. It's how a driver feels when the race is melting down and the pit wall has to choose between two paths, one path that maximizes the champion's points and another path that might win Oscar the race but risk the champion's title defense. When you're the reigning champion, the tiebreakers tend to fall your way. So Oscar enters 2026 in this weird, almost cruel position. He's proven enough to be dangerous but not crowned enough to be protected. Now let's rewind a bit. Why are fans so hooked on this? Because 2025 wasn't a season where Oscar got exposed. It wasn't a season where he looked slow. It was a season where he looked like a title threat and still ended up watching the trophy go to the other side of the garage. And that creates a specific kind of psychological scar. When a driver loses a title because they were simply not quick enough, the fix is clear: improve, work harder, get faster. But when a driver feels like momentum slipped away through a mix of operational calls, timing, incidents, and the politics of a title fight, that's harder, because the fix isn't just performance, the fix is influence. And influence in F1 is everything. It decides what direction the car development follows, it decides which setup philosophy gets prioritized, it decides whose feedback becomes the baseline. This is where the conversation becomes real. Because in modern Formula One, you don't just fight drivers, you fight systems. And Oscar's fear, whether he says it publicly or not, will be this: what if the system is starting to orbit Lando? Now, McLaren will tell you they have two number ones. They will say both drivers get equal chances. They'll point to clean internal rules, shared data, shared opportunities, and they'll be right up to a point. But history doesn't care about press releases. F1 history is full of teams that started neutral and ended up building around the champion, because it's the path of least resistance when pressure rises. And make no mistake, pressure is rising. Why? Because 2026 isn't just another season. It's a regulation reset, and resets create chaos. New cars, new aero behaviors, new hybrid demands, new operational mistakes, and likely more DNFs and reliability drama than fans are used to. In that chaos, teams cling to certainty. And the champion is the closest thing to certainty. So if McLaren's 2026 car is brilliant, Oscar's challenge becomes, can I beat the champion in equal machinery while the team is trying to defend a title? If McLaren's 2026 car is unstable or inconsistent, Oscar's challenge becomes even worse. Will the team default to protecting the champion's campaign while I become the experimental path? Either way, it's pressure. And this is why the Oscar Piastri 2026 storyline is so dangerous for McLaren. Because Oscar isn't the type of driver who needs attention to perform. He's calm, he's clinical, he's the guy who looks like he's solving a math problem at 320 km/h. But calm drivers don't tolerate uncertainty forever. They don't explode in interviews, they don't throw tantrums, they just start making moves. And in Formula One, the moment a top driver starts quietly evaluating options, the team relationship changes permanently, even if the driver stays. Now here where it gets spicy, and it's the part fans will love. Oscar Piastri has something that makes this situation explosive. He can genuinely threaten Lando on pure pace. If Oscar was half a second slower, the team could manage him. If Oscar was inconsistent, the politics would be easy. But Oscar is close. Sometimes he's faster, sometimes he's sharper in wheel-to-wheel fights, sometimes he looks like the driver rivals respect more in direct combat. That means one thing. McLaren cannot simply manage Oscar without risking losing him. And losing Oscar would be a nightmare because you don't replace that talent easily, not in this era. So McLaren are walking into 2026 with a balancing act that could define their next decade. Defend Lando's title without creating an Oscar problem. And Oscar is walking into 2026 with a mission that's bigger than wins. He has to reclaim the narrative. Because right now the narrative is simple: Lando is the champion, Lando is the face, Lando is the guy. Oscar has to turn that into, this is not a one-man team. How does he do that? He does it with early statements. And when I say statements, I don't mean words, I mean weekends. The first 3 to 5 races of 2026 will be crucial. If Oscar starts that season by out-qualifying Lando, winning a race, taking points off him cleanly, and doing it without drama, the entire internal dynamic changes. Suddenly, the team cannot casually drift into a champion-centric orbit because the other driver is a title threat. That is the fastest way to force equality to become real. But if Oscar starts 2026 with even a small dip, 2 slow weekends, 1 mistake, 1 unlucky incident, then the old pattern kicks in. The champion gets the safer strategy, the safer calls, the safer development. And that's when the story turns dark. Because once the team gets used to prioritizing one side, revering it is almost impossible without a civil war. And make no mistake, civil wars happen quietly before they happen loudly. It starts with radio tension, then it becomes strategy disagreements, then it becomes why did we pit him first, then it becomes why did he get the new floor, then it becomes why is my side always reacting. And then the driver market starts whispering. That's the part that gives Oscar leverage, because even if the rumors about a future move are exaggerated, the idea alone creates pressure. Teams across the grid love a driver like Oscar, young, fast, clean, mentally strong, brand-friendly, and still hungry. So McLaren can't take him for granted. And Oscar can't afford to sit politely in the shadow of a champion, because once you accept that role in F1, the sport never gives it back to you. Now let's talk about what makes this story even better for a video, the human side. Oscar Piastri is not loud, he doesn't sell you emotion with big quotes, but that's why his situation is fascinating. Because the most dangerous drivers aren't the emotional ones, they're the quiet ones who make decisions before you realize they've made them. If Oscar genuinely feels like the internal balance is slipping, he won't shout about it. He'll respond with performance, with positioning, with leverage. And the moment he feels he can't win this fight inside McLaren, he'll start building a future outside it. That's the tension. So going into 2026, here's the real question we should be asking. Can Oscar Piastri beat the champion and beat the system at the same time? Because winning in F1 isn't just about the stopwatch, it's about being the driver the team cannot afford to not back. And Oscar's entire 2026 season will be about becoming that driver again, whether McLaren likes it or not. Now I want you to think about this. If Oscar comes out in 2026 and starts beating Lando early, what happens? Do McLaren let them race and risk losing points to rivals? Or do they start making quiet decisions to stabilize the champion's defense? And if they do, how long before Oscar's patience runs out? That's why this story is going to be one of the most addictive storylines of the new era. Because it's not just a rivalry. It's a power shift waiting to happen. If you enjoyed this breakdown, drop your opinion in the comments. Real talk. Should Oscar stay and fight it out at McLaren, or should he plan an exit if he senses the hierarchy is locked? And if you want more F1 stories like this, fast, honest, and with the real politics behind the scenes, subscribe, because 2026 is going to be chaos, and this is exactly the kind of chaos we're going to break down together.